You get an email that your project funding was just pulled, or you realize a systemic failure is going to wipe out months of hard work. Your heart rate spikes, your focus narrows, and biology takes over. Your brain defaults to a state of complete paralysis. Compare that modern stress to the financial collapse of 1857. Over a few short months, the price of grain plummeted across the country. Businesses failed virtually overnight, and westward expansion came to a dead halt. The public panicked. John D. Rockefeller was a 16-year-old bookkeeper in Cleveland at the time. Instead of retreating from the chaos or looking for a safer career, he chose to simply watch. He treated the Depression as a school of adversity. At 25, he demonstrated this discipline when he returned $500,000 to investors because he didn't like the look of the oil fields. He spent years saving and observing, waiting for the market to reveal its true weaknesses, while his competitors rushed into bad deals. When later panics hit, Rockefeller used his cash reserves to buy out his emotional rivals at a fraction of their value. By the time the economy stabilized, he controlled 90% of the oil market. His empire was the physical manifestation of a psychological state that used chaos as a tool for leverage. That psychological control was documented centuries earlier by Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. During his 19-year reign, he managed constant warfare, a horrific plague, a depleted treasury, and betrayal by his closest allies. Sitting in his tent on the front lines, he recorded a formula in his private journal for turning every problem into a chance to practice a specific virtue, such as patience or resourcefulness. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That concept breaks down into a replicable two-step mechanical framework. First, you master your internal perception of an event. Second, you follow it with relentless external action. This is a strictly pragmatic strategy for taking a disadvantage and engineering it into leverage. It requires ruthless objectivity. This diagram shows how perception acts as a filter between an event and our reaction. We have two pathways here. On top, we have the observing eye, where a piece of raw data enters and passes through cleanly as objective reality. On the bottom, we have the perceiving eye, where that exact same data collides with a thick, jagged filter. That filter represents the emotional baggage we attach to a neutral event. The situation itself isn't angry or terrifying. We inject fear and frustration into it, distorting the reality of the problem. In the 1960s, top middleweight boxing contender Reuben Hurricane was wrongly convicted of a triple homicide and handed 3 life sentences. Standing in the intake line, he informed the guards that while they controlled his physical location, they did not control his attitude. He refused to perceive himself as a victim, rejecting the emotional baggage entirely. Because his perception was completely clear of despair, he was able to use his solitary confinement as a workshop. He spent every waking minute reading law, philosophy, and history. He built the intellectual foundation that eventually helped overturn his verdict. We rarely get to choose the physical barriers placed in front of us, but by stripping away the emotional reaction to those barriers, we ensure we always retain the power to respond. Once your perception is clear, you have to immediately engage with the problem physically. The world does not wait for you to feel fully prepared. In the 1920s, Amelia Earhart wanted to be a great aviator, but she faced severe systemic sexism. Eventually, she received a highly insulting offer. She could join a transatlantic flight, but she wouldn't get to fly, she wouldn't be paid a dime, and she could very well die in the process. She said yes. She knew that simply getting into the plane would give her the initial momentum she needed. 5 years later, she parlayed that single action into becoming the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. Maintaining that momentum requires iterative action. During the Civil War, General Ulysses S. Grant found his army completely blocked by the heavily fortified city of Vicksburg for nearly a year. Grant didn't wait for a stroke of brilliant inspiration. He systematically tested the barrier. He attacked head-on and failed. He spent months digging new canals to bypass the river entirely and failed again. Finally, he took an enormous risk, floating his boats directly past the enemy gun batteries in the dead of night, and broke through. Proper action is the unglamorous, exhaustive elimination of failed options until the obstacle finally cracks. When you combine objective perception with iterative action, you realize that obstacles are not dead ends. They are actually instructors, actively forcing you away from bad options and carving out the correct path to your goal. This feedback loop shows how the concept works in modern engineering. An object hits a failure wall, but the system doesn't stop. The resulting data is instantly routed back, upgrading the object for the next attempt. Failure is a feature. Apply this mechanical framework to the crisis sitting in front of you right now, whether it's an aggressive corporate rival, an unexpected firing, or a completely collapsed project. Instead of submitting to the biological default and asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you can train yourself to ask a highly tactical question: where is the hidden advantage in this? Strip away the panic and commit to iteration. The obstacle itself provides the momentum and direction required to move forward.